Okay, so top 100 is slightly misleading. I just participated in the GMTK Game Jam 2025 with a team of 4 other talented folks. Created Whirl E, this chaotic, fast-paced, arcade-style game, but how did we get here? This jam's timing was, challenging for me. If you don't know, the days before the start of this jam, I was doing a fun challenge with fellow VGM composer and hireable guy, Flowerhead, where we created an entire video game OST in just 24 hours with back-to-back 12-hour streams over 2 days. This challenge, which will be made into a video in due time, was incredibly fun, but also incredibly draining, and by the end of each day, I felt like I'd run a mental marathon. And what was waiting for me at the finish line but another challenge with a ridiculous time limit? The 2025 installment of the GMTK Game Jam is the largest game jam itch.io has ever seen, and there was no way I was missing it. We tried to guess the theme based on previous jams. Mark Brown usually does themes that are phrases like roll the dice, roles reversed, and built to scale. So we were all surprised when the theme was just one word.
One word. Loop.
As you do in a game jam after a theme is revealed, we scrambled into a Miro board to brainstorm for a long time, and we ended up going for an idea that I had actually come up with. A 2D side-scroller where you're able to attach a hook to circular objects to spin around them, build up speed, and fling yourself into enemies and obstacles. This morphed into using a spinning floating yo-yo as a grappling point that you can put anywhere within a radius around you. I insisted that I really saw this idea as a 2D action platformer where you fling yourself through designed levels with a ton of momentum-based platforming and optional speed. But I am very glad that the team talked me away from that and more towards an arcade-style arena game where you just kill enemies and focus on a high score. This kept the scope way more possible for 4 days, and generally resulted in a tighter, more polished final product. So thank you team for being right. We went with a colorful pixel art style inspired by Satron DX and made the main character a weaponized robot. Since I had just finished up the OST in 24 hours the day before, I decided I'd focus on sound effects to start and do music later. That being said, ideas for music still rattled around in my brain. I could go with something sort of Pizza Tower inspired, or some jungle with chiptune elements, or classic chiptune plus real instruments a la Anamanaguchi, or like I could, but that was for later. It's sound effects time. Some of you may be a bit surprised to know that I am super into sound design. I call myself a game audio designer for a reason, because I don't want to leave out sound design. Now, to immediately display my expertise as a sound designer, I'll show you how I made the first sound effect. So the first sound effect was made using Chiptone, a software designed for people of all skill levels to get retro sound. Hey, there's nothing wrong with using Chiptone, and it got me exactly what I wanted out of the jump sound. I went on to make some more generic sound effects like box breaks, because we thought we would have box obstacles that the player crashes through. These box breaks are comprised of these nice down-sampled noise hits I designed in Vital, and some wood crashing sounds from a free library I had lying around. After this, I realized I'd be doing a lot of robot sounds, so I recorded some sounds of a toolbox and screws and other metal things rustling and being handled. These would get used in the player damage and death sounds alongside the original enemy damage and death sounds. A lot of the sound in this game is a result of my eyebrow-raising passion for field recording, which is basically recording sounds in uncontrolled spaces for later use. Now, for the yo-yo sounds, I was actually in luck. In middle school, I had a short phase where I really got into yo-yoing for some reason. So I had a yo-yo lying around and I knew how to use it. So a while ago, I recorded a bunch of sounds of my yo-yo. These sounds would go into the very satisfying yo-yo cast sound for our robot hero. Now, the sound that was staring me down from the other side of the subway, making me uncomfortable, was the yo-yo orbit sound. I needed it to be a looping sound whose pitch and speed rose as the player spun faster and faster on the yo-yo before topping out and holding at a max pitch and speed. I was thinking about exactly how I was going to achieve this in Godot, referring to previous projects where I'd done similar systems. I was going to need a getter and a setter and a unique bus for this. Oh, Chris implemented it for me. It's pushed. As is very common in game jams, some details of the game changed as we worked on it. Namely, the enemies being bugs rather than fellow robots like I had assumed. So I retooled and finalized a bunch of sound effects to match that change, with some banana crushes rather than toolbox rattles paired with downsampled retro noise hits for the enemy deaths, and a slightly more vocal sounding enemy hit. I thought that the OST in 24 hours would leave me completely creatively empty when it came to the music, but no, not really. Some vibe chasing and asking the devs what they hear for the game landed me on the Mega Man style. A series of OSTs I'm very familiar with and love dearly. If you're wondering, this is my ranking of the classic OSTs. I decided I'd go all in on a retro arcadey sound using a ton of the ST01 sounds from Chip Sounds, and started on this for the level theme. Lots of fun chromatic bass movement, flat 6 chord because Mega Man, fast notes, driving drums. Then I made this version with this notey intro. And this melody section. If you notice any resemblance to other melodies I've written lately, you're wrong and stupid. I win.
Bye-bye.
Later on, I made this version with this dark bridge section that slowly brings us from E minor to a G sharp 7 chord. Which then drops us into the key of C sharp minor for this section with one of the best melodies I think I've ever written. Then we get back to E minor with this stupid 16th note line and some harmonic trickery, and vamp on that till we loop. After that, I made the title theme, which came out so naturally, I was sure I accidentally ripped something off. Aside from the thing I intentionally ripped off, which is the Game Corner theme from Pokemon Gold and Silver. My aim was something energetic, groovy, and arcadey, and I think I hit that target pretty well. I got this layered groove with a couple instruments each doing their own thing before syncing up on this chromatic rise, and of course, a groovy, busy-ass bass line under all of it. After this, I made some more sound effects. Rather than the breakable boxes, since we were going full arcade enemy slaughtering, the breakables were more like power-ups. So I created a sound effect for the exploding red breakable, the bullet-filled yellow breakable, and the healing green breakable. That's my favorite sound effect I made for the game. I also did some sounds for the enemy actions, now that we had animations and gameplay for those locked in. I especially love this sound for the mosquito-type enemy, where I used this recording of a fan in my dorm. It sounds weird because I used a contact mic, which is something you stick to an object, and rather than sensing vibrations in the air pressure like a normal mic, it senses vibrations in the solid object it's stuck to. That, plus some effects and pitch shifting, gets you here. Now, if the yo-yo orbit was the sound effect staring me down from across the subway, the player wall bounce was the sound making eye contact with me and breathing heavily once I got on the train. I did not have a strong idea for how this should sound, especially once I saw how chaotically and quickly the player bounces. But I was soon inspired by a pretty late animation edition, where the player becomes a saw blade when they rev to max and bounce around. So I tried for a while to get a sound that sounded like a saw blade skidding off of metal or a generally sharp metal object hitting another, and ended up finding something perfect off of freesound.com. Like with many of the sound effects in this game, and in any game with repeating sound effects, I made heavy use of in-engine random pitch shifting to make this sound really work. And with that, my work on the audio was mostly done. I spent the rest of the time I had mixing and making sure levels of all the sounds and music sounded good enough. I think something a lot of people overlook in judging the polish and professionality of a game is the audio mixing. A game with poor audio mixing is a one-way ticket to sounding amateur, and I think a lot of jam games, and indie games even, suffer from that. Within the last hours of the jam, I added 2 more sound effects. These were made to synergize with a new mechanic where if you're fully charged while spinning in place, you're immune to damage. Those being a loop for when you're fully charged, and even later within the time we had, a one-shot sparkle to let the player know once they've reached full charge. We submitted the final build with about 25 minutes left, and Whirl E was finished. Guys, this game is so good. It feels great to play and is fun and chaotic, but still has some depth. This is probably my favorite game I've worked on out of the many jams I've done. And I also think this is probably the best sounding game I've worked on, which feels great. Even if the ratings rolled in and the audio score was low, I'd have still felt a great sense of achievement with the sound design and music in this game. That being said, the ratings did roll in, and the audio score was sure as hell not low. I joked at the start of this video, but I truly do not take for granted how insane number 97 in audio is in a jam with almost 10,000 entries. I'm very grateful to anyone who played the game, and extremely grateful to the team for making a great game and helping me wherever they could with the audio. Thanks for watching. I do commissions and am available to be hired. And here are some other games from the jam I think you should play. Links to all of them will be in the pinned comment.